compare and contrast 2007 to what we're seeing now. How systemic does this seem to be to you?
Well, I think the issue in 2007 was clearly the banking sector, which is all over it. And, you know, that was the issue. The banking sector went down. This is a very different thing. This is localised into commercial real estate funds. I mean, the Bank of England started warning about this 6 months ago. In their financial stability report back in December, they were saying there are all these open-ended funds in the commercial market, which I didn't understand. I mean, you can't obviously withdraw. These aren't liquid investments, one would think. But obviously, it's an issue for the investor, it's an issue for the market, which is correcting. I think the Bank of England is quite happy with a correction, is whether you get a collapse in the sector, which is obviously much more concerning. But at the moment, it's not systemic for the banking sector, and the banking sector now is in a very different space to where it was in 2007 and 8.
But this takes us to the front cover of Daybreak today. Sterling breaks $1.30, May takes an early lead in the PM race, and the Iraq War Inquiry reports today. The toppling of these boxes, of course, is what the concern is within the property market. It starts the litmus paper of an explosion in the marketplace is in the commercial property. It dropped by 40% back in 2007, 2008. And the concern, the deep-rooted concern, is about the banks. You say it's not systemic at this stage, but it is about confidence, and it is about pricing, and it's about UK assets.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, since 2007 8, it was the Bank of England was here to say, well, they've raised, obviously, liquid assets on the balance sheet. They've got 600 billion of liquid assets on the balance sheet. Moreover, that sort of change in the capital buffers obviously releases 5 billion of capital, which they can then hopefully, you know, to withstand, you know, what's going on in terms of the correction in the economy. I think we all know the UK is slowing sharply, may in fact go into technical recession. That's an open risk in Q4 this year, Q1 next year. And they want obviously the Bank of England's trying to, you know, ensure that the banking sector doesn't amplify the problem. It actually acts as a shock absorber. And I think the commercial market hasn't been underpinned by massive amounts of bank lending. I mean, that's again a very important difference. So the investors concerned, obviously it's an issue, but the banking sector is not all over this in the way it was in 2007 and 8.
One of the interesting things that we don't know yet is about passporting rights and how much the financial services sector will be able to sell its services into the rest of Europe. And this matters because a lot of the concern around commercial real estate at least starts with how much demand is there going to be for all this office space in London. The trouble is with this, it's going to be a long time until we get the answer to that. The latest I've been reading is that it takes some time to negotiate our departure from the EU, and only after that is done can we then start having conversations about trading arrangements with the EU from the outside. So we've got a long way to go on this, David.
Absolutely, and that's why I think, you know, the bank again would be very happy with the fall in the currency. I mean, obviously, you know, they don't want it to collapse in value and it falls overnight another 10%, but they want it to go lower because obviously the lower it goes, the more attractive commercial and resi real estate in the UK becomes to an overseas investor. It's part of the actual adjustment process, as Carly was saying yesterday.
But David, I mean, Anne and I started the show with Brown Brothers Harriman saying that there is no end in sight to the pound. Now, look, we're going to get lots of notes. We're going to get lots of things written. I find it ironic. This time last year, Europe was a race to the bottom with the euro. Yen was racing to the bottom with the yen. There was this great desire for a debasement of currency. I would challenge anybody that says that a debasement in sterling is enough to bolster this economy. It may bolster the property market in the interim period and put a floor on it. It will not bolster UK PLC. It is a services-driven economy, outward-looking.
Well, that's also true, and to the extent that Brexit is a supply shock, and it is, you know, a supply shock, the exchange rate can't do much of the adjusting for the economy. You need other things to come through. Hence, you know, George Osborne's talking about, you know, slashing corporation tax, well, not slashing it, but cutting it further to, you know, 10 or 15%, you know, going forwards from 20%. Those things are necessary to improve the supply side workings of the economy. But the exchange rate will help the adjustment process in the sense that if you're an overseas investor, the commercial sector in the UK will look more attractive on a relative basis. The gilt market will look more attractive on a relative basis if the currency adjusts. I also remember sterling when it got down to 105.30 back in '85. We're all betting, you know, at that point whether it would go through parity. You know, are we going to say the same thing this time around? I don't know, but I suspect, you know, the UK authorities will be quite happy with sterling trading between 115 and 120 against the dollar.
Do you think the Bank of England is striking the right tone right now, David? Of course, there was a lot of political conversation going on around this before the vote. Mark Carney now, as my colleague Angie in Asia described him, some people are saying he's the adult in the room in terms of the UK institutional story right now, but some have been critical. He says he just wants to be honest.
Well, I think he has to be honest. He has to highlight the risks. He's been absolutely right. I think most people in my position would actually say, well, the bank was quite right to warn about the risks, and it's in charge of not just hitting an inflation target, but financial stability, full stop. So it has to go through these motions, and it's what it's done again yesterday is very, very sensible.